This one's for you gamers. We're going to set up Linux to game. Hey everyone, what's happening? Gaming on Linux. You'll have to do some configuration to your operating system to game efficiently on Linux. It's about 7 steps. However, they're not hard. However, they do need to be run to run most games. So first of all, we're going to install a GPU driver, install GAMEMODE, install Wine, install VULKAN and DXVK if your GPU supports it. Install Steam and configure Steam Play, which is also Proton. Verify eSync and enable it. Install LUTRIS. Now LUTRIS and Wine says they're optional. I'll go into that later in the video. Now, the way I'm going to do things is more of a proof of concept rather than a strict step-by-step how-to guide. Each distribution is different and has its own way of doing things, so you need to consult your distribution's handbook, wiki, documentation to find out how to do it. I mean, like GPU drive is a little harder in Ubuntu because you have to add a PPA to update it to the latest version. Other than that, you just need to follow your distribution's instructions. If you're doing Manjaro, this will be a step-by-step how-to guide. But any other distribution, you really need to read that wiki and do your research, because not all this will work in every distribution the way I will show you. However, you still have to go and install Vulkan. You still have to install Steam. GAMEMODE is optional. However, it's beneficial in most games. Stuff like that. You have to go through these steps. Just how you might do it is different as far as commands in your terminal, etc. So let's go ahead. Let's dive into this. First, we need to install a GPU driver, or as most people would call your GPU, your graphics card driver. Now, different distributions will have different methods on how to do this, so consult your distribution's documentation. Just do a search in the wiki or Google search, it'll come right up for your distribution. However, you may already have it installed if you have a AMD or Intel GPU, because they use open source drivers, but you need to verify that it's the correct driver, not a generic driver. Make sure it says Intel Corporation or Intel GPU or AMD GPU for Mesa. Okay? If it says anything else, you need to make sure that you install the correct driver for AMD or Intel, whatever your GPU is. Now for NVIDIA, you'll most likely have the Nouveau driver installed for NVIDIA GPU by default, and you're going to want to replace that driver with the proprietary NVIDIA driver. And like I said, you need to consult your distributions documentation on how to do that. However, it's not hard. Normally, you just press a button and it'll do it. However, that open source driver is great for office work and rendering your desktop, etc. But for gaming performance and 3D performance, you're going to want that proprietary driver for NVIDIA. I know proprietary drivers, not everyone likes them, but when you're using an NVIDIA card, it's required. Now the way you go about in Manjaro about verifying and installing your drivers, you're going to go to Manjaro settings and hardware configuration, and it's right here under display controller. Of course, here we got our network controllers, but of course here's mine. It's an Intel driver, and it's already been installed, the Video Linux. That's all I need. So literally I don't need to do anything further because I already have it installed by default. In Manjaro, this will be most likely the case. Even with a proprietary NVIDIA driver, I think it installs that by default, but don't quote me on that. I don't have NVIDIA GPUs, so I don't know that for a fact, but still, verify your driver if you're using Manjaro, or verify your driver in any distribution. Now we're going to install GAMEMODE, and GAMEMODE allows you to get the most out of your CPU when running games. It also can work in other applications too. I've gone over GAMEMODE in detail in another video. I'll link that up in the upper right hand corner. Be sure to check that out. If you're going to be gaming in Linux, you're going to want that, and you're going to want that information. But I'm just going to go ahead and install it here. I'm going to pop open a terminal. And this is how you do it in Manjaro/Arch. Whoops. There we go. And it's as simple as that. GAMEMODE is now installed. And that is all for that section. Now we're going to go over installing Wine. Wine is just a compatibility layer for Windows, so you can run Windows applications inside of a Linux environment. Now there are two situations where you don't have to install Wine. One is if you are only going to run Linux native games, then you don't need to install Wine, because you're not going to need that compatibility. Another is if you're just running Windows games from Steam, because Steam has Proton, and you don't need Wine for that. However, if you're installing Windows games from your own personal disks, or from other sources such as GOG, or the Bethesda launcher, or Epic's little launcher, then you're going to need Wine for those. So the way you install is you can go to winehq.org, go to download, and they've got a list of all the major distributions except for Arch and Manjaro. And the reason for that is because it's in the main repositories. But just click on one of your distributions and follow the instructions. And I would suggest you go with the stable patch. Ubuntu is for Linux Mint as well, so just letting you know. A couple cautions with Wine is you need to watch where you're getting your downloads from, because Wine is a Windows compatibility layer. It runs the good programs, but it also runs the bad. So you can open yourself up to Windows viruses. Now, they'll be confined to their little wine bottles or containers, and they'll only run with standard privileges. So it's not going to mess up your system. It might cause some strange things to happen, but all you have to do is just eliminate the wine bottle and you'll be fine. But I will go over Wine in more detail in another video. However, we're going to go ahead and install it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a terminal. And it'll be a sudo pacman -S wine. And I'm going to go ahead and enter in my password and install it. So I had all the dependencies installed already. There we are. Now, also, we're going to install another package called WineTricks. So, pacman -S WineTricks, and that allows us to install stuff like DirectX and other stuff inside of our wine bottles. So, this is a necessary package to install alongside Wine too. Now they have Wine and WineTricks installed. We can move on to the next step. Now we're going over VULKAN. Then you're going to need Wine for those. DXVK installation. The way you install is you can go to winehq.org. You do this by installing VULKAN. Go to Downloads, and they've got a list of all the major distributions except for Arch and Manjaro. For me, it'd be the reason for that is because it's in the main repositories. So I go, just click on one of your distributions and follow the instructions. I would suggest you go with the stable capital S. Ubuntu is for Linux Mint as well. VULKAN, so just letting you know. A couple cautions with Wine. Now, for AMD, you need to watch where you get AMD GPU or Radeon check. Wine is a Windows compatibility layer, and it runs the good programs, but it also runs video code, so you can open yourself up. There's not to Windows viruses. Now, they'll be confined to the VULKAN and DXVK little wine bottles, so you can skip this step if you don't only have that with standard privileges. But a good rule of thumb, if a GPU was made within the last 5 years, it's not going to mess up your system. It might cause some strange things to happen, but all you have to do is just eliminate the wine bottle and it'll be fine. But I will go over Wine in more detail in another video. So if you're not sure, install it. We're going to go ahead and install it. If not, go ahead and open up a terminal. The worst that can happen is it not work. Now, for NVIDIA, you will not need to install any additional drivers. Those are included in the proprietary drivers, so you can skip the driver and install my password, and install it. For me, for AMD and Intel, you have to install this. Installed already. And then, you have to install DXVK. To install DXVK, now consult your distributions. We're going to install another package called WineTricks. For more information on that, Pacman. For me, it'd be a tries for the AUR WineTricks, and that allows us to install VK-bin. For Ubuntu, stuff like there's a whole page on that. I'll link that inside of our wine bottles. So this is a necessary package for graphics driving stuff will also be in that page. Now they have Wine and WineTricks installed. We can move on to the next step. Capital S. But this would be distribution specific. So just letting you know about that. And now this is going to build DXVK. And it's going to install the ICD loader. But again, if you do not support VULKAN on your GPU, this will not hurt anything. It just won't work. It'll just convert everything to OpenGL. But VULKAN will help you a lot with your performance if you support it. And that was VULKAN and DXVK. Next, we're going to go ahead and install Steam. Now, Steam is your best option, I would often say, because of Steam Proton, for gaming. I mean, Proton is amazing, all that kind of stuff. However, there's a lot of free games and all that stuff like that. However, Proton is amazing. I mean, you can get most games to work in Proton. So the way you install Steam on Manjaro is quite simple. On most other distributions, it is in the repositories. Go ahead and install it. All you have to do is just search Steam. It'll be there. But I'm just going to do a sudo pacman -S Steam -Manjaro. Whoops, I double hit that again. Now, it says reinstalling. I had it installed by default, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit no, but it's already been installed. But if it's not installed by default, just install it. Now, we're going to go ahead and look for Steam. Be an internet right here. Steam. There we are. Come on. Now it's going to go through an update process where it pulls down all the proprietary elements of Steam. Of course, Steam is a proprietary program. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. Allow it to install all the proprietary elements. And I'm going to sign in and go through the two-factor authentication, etc. And then I will bring it back up when I get Steam installed and up and running. So when it's finished updating, all you have to do is sign into your Steam account. I've already done that. So I'm going to go ahead and change the view to list because I like this view better. Now, as you can see, I only have 82 games. I know I have over 100. And that's because I have not yet set up Steam Play yet. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Options, Settings, and we're going to go to Steam Play. And now Steam Play has supported titles in a list. I'm just going to go ahead and enable them for all. Now some of these may not work out of the box. The supported titles will work out of the box because they've already configured Proton to run. However, I just hit enable Steam Play for all other titles. However, you may need to do some configuration of Proton to get them to work. I will go for configuring and getting a unsupported title. Now I know it's unsupported working, and how you can figure out what you need to do to get it working. However, today I'm just showing you how to turn it on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I'm going to hit Restart Steam. It should come up in a second. Here it goes. And here we are. Now, of course, it's coming up with the Steam store. Now, the way you install a game, I'm going to install a Windows game right here. And here we go. Next, and now it's going to download and install that game. This is a Windows game. Now, also, Steam has Linux native clients as well. So some may just be Linux native. So as you can see, here it is, Steam Linux runtime, and it's going to install Proton and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I'm going to let it run in the background, and we're going to continue on. Here's a little addendum to Steam Play and setting it up. I didn't realize this till I started recording the last part of the video that I kind of set it up wrong. When I set it up, it had this Steam Linux runtime here. Right there. that is actually wrong. And when I went to go and start up a game in Steam, it didn't start. So what you want to do is make sure this says Proton and it's the latest version. It'll be the top one. So make sure it doesn't say Steam Linux Runtime. That is a new option I've never actually seen before. So I don't know what it does, but it doesn't launch games. So make sure that it's on the latest version of Proton. And at the time of recording this video, it is 4.11 subversion 7. Now we're going to go over eSync and how to check if it's enabled. Now eSync allows you to reduce the overhead of Wine and your operating system so you can get the best performance out of your Windows titles. It may work for Linux titles too occasionally. However, it's mainly for Wine and Windows titles. Now the way you check it is you're going to go ahead and open up a terminal. And the chances are, in a lot of distributions, it's enabled by default. But you want to check that. So it'd be a U limit. Now you're going to do a switch, which is a dash capital H N. Now, if the number is 524,288 or greater, it means eSync is enabled. See, I have 524,288. That means eSync is enabled. Now, if you don't have a number that's equal or greater to 524,288, you're going to have to enable it. Now, I'm going to link this page in the description. And basically, it's a text file edit. You have systemd. You're going to modify this. You're going to follow these instructions. If you don't have systemd, you're going to follow these instructions. LUTRIS can enable it too, and etc. But I'm going to go over LUTRIS next. But basically, that is eSync. I can't tell you how to enable it because I don't know if you're using systemd or not, and I already have it enabled. So that is eSync. Now, we're going to install LUTRIS. Now, LUTRIS is optional. However, for beginners on Linux and Wine, etc., it is a really good tool because LUTRIS will set up your wine bottles for you. And there's also another tool called Play on Linux. I'll also probably go over that in a later video. But LUTRIS will set up Wine, and a lot of times there are scripts that will install like whatever dependencies inside of Wine you need to install by default, and you won't have to mess with anything. So it's a really good tool if you want something to be configured automatically. Now the way you install it is you can go to lutris.net and hit download and follow the instructions here. It's listed for every major distribution right here. Now, we're going to go ahead and whoops, sorry, that's Steam. And we're going to go ahead and install it. So it'll be we're going to go down to Arch right here. Of course, it's in the repository, so it's a sudo pacman -S LUTRIS. Whoops, I double hit that again. Alright, there we go. Resolving dependencies. And it's as simple as that. Now, if you're going to install Windows games, what you want to do is just search something. Let's search something random like the next Tetris. Okay, that's not in there. Let's search Carmageddon. Did I not spell that correctly? You know what? Let's search Witcher. And what you will do is, let's just say you want to install The Witcher 3. And as you see, it's got a GOG version right here. And you would just download the install script and allow it to run. Now, let's see if it's going. I'll go over some of this in a minute. Alright. It's done installing. So that would be in your games right here. And here's LUTRIS. Alright, hit OK. Alright, you can also add your Linux games, etc. So we're going to go ahead. I'm just going to click install right here. The open link. Now, it's going to require your credentials. Oh, it's opening it again. Yeah. It's going to require your credentials and all that stuff into there, and it will go through an automated process and install the games with its dependencies. I'm going to cancel that because that's going to take forever. But basically, if it's a recent game, just search it in there. Or you can also open up LUTRIS. And, okay, come on. And search it up here as well. It's really a handy tool. Now that you got all that set up, you're ready to play some games. So, this is by no means everything to do with configuring your operating system for gaming. This is just a bare minimum basic setup to get you started. There's all kinds of stuff like I've mentioned, play on Linux and Wine and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to go into Wine, play on Linux, and LUTRIS in later videos. But this is just a basic setup. Now, I'm going to go ahead and fire up some games. But first, I'm going to mention the Linux gaming scene for open source gaming. Now, a lot of these will be in your repository. Some of them will be GitHub projects, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and fire up Palmac and show you graphically what we can do. Now, of course, we got games here. I've got a few installed. I'm going to go ahead and install another one. Now, not all of these require setups, but most of these require a graphics driver. So, make sure you have your graphics driver installed before firing up any of these games. Let's find, that's a good one. And Gnome Nibbles. We'll apply. We'll go ahead and we'll install both of those. Just as simple as that. But yeah, check these games out. They're free, open source, etc. And there are a lot of these are a lot of fun. So, let's go ahead. Let's fire up a game. Steam. This Legend of Heroes, Trails of the Sky. I've got this all configured to start. So we're going to go ahead and start this. Apparently I don't have this configured for full screen, but that's okay. Let's go ahead, let's configure that for full screen. I'm going to go ahead and just take that off of window mode, but you get the point there. Now, whenever you're starting up a non-Linux game, a Windows game, for the first time, you will get this. Okay, it's just saying that it's a non-Linux native game, and it's going to start with Steam Play. You just press continue to ignore it. That's all you need to do, and it'll go through and install its dependencies and start it up. Of course, this is Worms. Worms is a lot of fun too, but I just wanted to show you that basic configuration. So I'm just going to close out of that. Now, as far as this Linux gaming goes, I'm going to go ahead and fire up LUTRIS. You don't have to fire up LUTRIS, they'll be listed right here. But I'm just going to show you LUTRIS for a second, because I want to dive into one more aspect of LUTRIS before I hack this off. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and disable that. I always support LUTRIS, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit add game and hit import games. I can just import all these Linux games into LUTRIS. That is by no means required, but then you can start all your Linux in there. You can also import your Steam games into LUTRIS as well. GOG works, but I'll go into LUTRIS a little bit more in a minute. However, I am planning on doing some like open source game reviews, and pretty much you just start up a game like this. Nibbles. Yeah, I love Nibbles. This is a Linux game, so I feel like crashing my worm. Alright. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hack this off. Have fun. Like always, feel free to like, subscribe, share, and leave me a comment. If you have any questions about that, go ahead and ask them in the comment section below. I'll try and get them answered. And I will see you next time.